Every single day, too many people wake up and live someone else's idea of their life. They put on a mask, not to deceive, but to belong. They silence their instincts not because they're unsure, but because they're afraid. And all of it, every bit of it, traces back to one dangerous habit, asking for permission to be who they already are. Let me tell you something hard but freeing. You do not need anyone's approval to live in alignment with your truth. We're taught from early on to raise our hands to speak, to wait our turn, to ask if it's okay. And those are fine rules for classrooms. But too many of us carry those same rules into adulthood. Waiting for someone to nod before we speak our mind. Waiting for someone to validate our path before we walk it. But here's the reality. The world is not going to hand you an invitation to be yourself. It never will. If you're waiting for that moment when someone says you're allowed to be who you are, you'll be waiting forever. Permission is a contract. And you don't need to sign it. When you constantly seek validation before acting, you give away the most powerful thing you own, your authority over yourself. And it happens in subtle ways. You feel a gut pull toward a project, but you wait until someone else tells you it's a good idea. You want to dress differently, speak differently, show up more boldly, but you wait for social proof for a thumbs up before you take the step. But the truth is, no one else has the context, the wiring, the vision, or the responsibility for your life that you do. The moment you stop seeking permission is the moment you begin to take responsibility. Responsibility to trust your gut. Responsibility to stand by your beliefs. Responsibility to be disliked, if it means being real. It's tempting to play small. It's easier to fit in. But fitting in is not belonging. It's a form of shrinking. You don't belong where you have to compress yourself to be accepted. Let me be even clearer. You will be misunderstood. You will be judged. You will lose people when you choose to be yourself. But you will gain your integrity, your peace, and your power. And those aren't things worth trading. You don't need approval to be authentic. That's a truth many people intellectually understand, but emotionally resist. We grow up in systems that reward compliance and punish difference, so it's no surprise that we internalize the idea that being fully ourselves is a risk, one that must be justified or permitted. But what if the risk isn't being yourself? What if the greater risk is spending your whole life trying to gain the approval of people who don't even know you? Authenticity is not a reward you earn from others for good behavior. It's a responsibility you owe to yourself. Too often people assume that being real is something you get to do once you're successful, once you've earned respect, once you've proven your value. But it's actually the opposite. The people who are most respected, trusted, and impactful in the long term are not the ones who played by every rule. They're the ones who had the courage to stand in their truth even when it was uncomfortable, unpopular, or misunderstood. We live in a world that is constantly measuring, comparing, and labeling. Whether it's social media, workplace culture, or even personal relationships, there's this unspoken pressure to mold ourselves into what's most acceptable, what's most desirable, or what's easiest to digest. We filter our words, our beliefs, even our appearance through a lens of will they approve, but the question we should be asking, do I approve of this version of me? Because when you betray your values to gain favor, you're not gaining love, you're trading identity for attention. And attention fades. Think about how much of your life has been shaped by needing someone else to say yes before you felt free to act. How many ideas you kept to yourself. How many choices you hesitated to make. How many times you dimmed your personality because you were afraid of being too much. Every time we shrink ourselves for the comfort of others, we reinforce a belief that our authentic self is unsafe, inconvenient, or unworthy. That belief, if left unchallenged, becomes a lifestyle. You stop asking, what do I want? And start living only for what do they think. But the truth is, most people aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you think. They're too caught up in their own search for approval. The irony is that while we're all busy trying to fit into molds, we're silently longing for someone, anyone, to just be real. That's why authenticity is magnetic. It reminds people of what they've buried. It wakes up something in them that says, oh, maybe I don't need to pretend either. Being authentic isn't about being rebellious or loud or shocking. It's about being honest. It's about saying what you mean, doing what aligns with your values, and showing up the same way in every room. It's about consistency between your internal compass and your external actions. And yes, that kind of alignment will threaten some people. It will make them uncomfortable. It may even make them walk away. But their discomfort is not your problem to solve. Your job is not to soothe everyone. It's to be someone No one else gets to define your worth. No one else lives with your consequences. And no one else will feel the regret if you spend your life playing a character. Approval is a moving target. You'll never hit it consistently. But self-respect, that stays, that grows. And that's what will carry you through seasons when nothing else makes sense. Stop waiting for the green light. Stop asking for permission. Stop hoping someone else will give you the nod that it's safe to be real. It's already safe. Not easy, but safe, because the only place you ever truly belong is in your own skin. And the moment you commit to living there unapologetically is the moment your life becomes yours again. Validation seeking is one of the most subtle yet powerful ways we give our authority away. It doesn't always show up loudly. Sometimes it hides behind compliments, behind the need to be liked, behind the desire to just make sure others agree with our choices. But at its core, it's a pattern of outsourcing our worth, looking outward to determine if we're good enough, smart enough, capable enough, or even just allowed to take up space. And the more we do it, the more we chip away at our own sense of self-trust. When you depend on external validation to feel secure in who you are or what you're doing, you hand over your internal compass to someone else. That might be your boss, your partner, your followers, or even society at large. You wait to move until someone else nods. You hold back ideas until someone says, "That's a great thought." You hesitate on decisions until someone reassures you that it's the right move. And all of this may look like humility on the surface, but often it's fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of standing alone. Fear of disapproval. Here's the danger. Validation is addictive, and it rewires your brain to depend on it. Every time you get a like, a compliment, or a pat on the back, your brain gets a small reward. It feels good, so you chase more of it. But the more you chase, the more you disconnect from your internal sense of clarity. You stop asking what's right for me and start asking what will they like. That subtle shift creates a deep erosion of power, because now your direction is reactive instead of intentional. People who seek constant validation often struggle with decisiveness, not because they don't have instincts, but because they've trained themselves not to trust those instincts without external confirmation. Over time, this becomes a habit of second-guessing, apologizing, over-explaining, or defaulting to the opinions of others, all of which dilute personal leadership. You can't lead your own life if you're constantly asking someone else to approve your map. This doesn't mean feedback is useless. It's important to remain open, teachable, and aware of how we impact others, but there's a difference between receiving insight and depending on affirmation. One expands your view, the other weakens your foundation. Real power comes from self-validation. That's not arrogance. It's ownership. It's the ability to look at your work and say, "This is good." To walk into a room and say, "I belong here." To speak an idea and say, "This matters," even if no one claps. It's knowing your own intention, even if it's misunderstood. It's knowing your direction, even if the world around you doesn't yet understand where you're going. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop needing validation, you actually become more impactful. People feel it when someone operates from inner conviction rather than external praise. It's magnetic, it's stable, it's trustworthy. You become someone who doesn't sway with every opinion, someone who isn't crushed by rejection or inflated by applause. You become consistent, not because people approve of you, but because you approve of your choices. Letting go of validation is not easy. It requires you to feel the discomfort of not being praised. It requires you to move through moments of doubt without someone holding your hand. It requires you to stand in silence after taking a stand and not panic when you're not immediately rewarded for it. But that is where strength is built. That's where real self-confidence is forged. So next time you catch yourself pausing, hesitating, or shrinking while you wait for someone else to say yes to your truth, pause and ask yourself, why am I giving them the final word of my life? Then take a breath and give that power back to where it belongs. You don't need anyone's stamp of approval to trust what you already know. The best leaders don't hide behind a polished image. They lead from a place of alignment. And that alignment comes only from self-honesty. So check your intentions. Audit your patterns. Tell yourself the truth, not to shame yourself, but to free yourself. Because once you're honest with yourself, no one can use your truth against you. And once you lead from that place, you won't need to be followed. People will choose to walk with you. You may lose friends. You may disappoint family. You may be misunderstood. And that will hurt. There's no pretending it won't. But the alternative, staying small just to stay connected, is a betrayal of your soul. You cannot simultaneously evolve and remain unchanged in the eyes of everyone around you. Growth demands release. And some people are only attached to the version of you that never questioned, never stretched, never said no. Let them go. That doesn't make them bad, and it doesn't make you wrong. It just means the path you're on now requires more truth than the relationship was built on. It means the dynamic worked when you were hiding parts of yourself, and now that you're standing in your full identity, the structure no longer holds. That is natural. That is necessary. That is growth. And as painful as it is to lose people, the gain is far more profound. You finally find yourself, you begin to live with integrity. You start making decisions based on what feels aligned, not what feels polite. You walk into rooms with your shoulders back, not wondering who you need to become to be accepted. You trust your instincts more. You apologize less for taking up space. You stop explaining your boundaries and start honoring them. When you gain yourself, you stop needing others to fill the void that self-abandonment created. You realize that connection is supposed to be mutual, not conditional. You learn to sit with solitude without feeling empty, and from that place you start attracting people who resonate with your truth, not your performance. These new connections won't require you to shrink. They won't ask you to edit your words or dreams or your beliefs. They'll see you, not the mask. They'll hold space for your growth, not resist it. And those relationships will feel different. Not louder or more exciting, but quieter, deeper, and more sustainable. But even if those new people take time to arrive, the relationship you build with yourself will be more than enough. You'll find freedom in no longer needing permission to be who you are. You'll feel peace knowing you no longer have to chase love by being less. And you'll stand firm in the truth that while losing people can be heartbreaking, losing yourself is soul-breaking. So choose you, even if it costs you connections, even if it costs you comfort, even if it costs you being understood. Because in the end, your authenticity is worth more than your popularity. And the people who are meant to walk with you won't be the ones you have to chase. They'll be the ones who meet you where you already are. Fitting in is not belonging. On the surface, they may look similar. Both involve being part of a group, feeling accepted, being seen. But beneath the surface, the two are fundamentally different. Fitting in requires you to change in order to be accepted. Belonging, on the other hand, only happens when you're accepted without having to change who you are. One demands compromise, the other welcomes truth. From childhood, we learn the value of blending in. We're rewarded when we say the right thing, wear the right clothes, act the right way. We're told to be polite, not make waves, follow the script. Over time, this social conditioning teaches us that to be safe, we need to adapt, that to be loved, we must adjust. So we learn how to read the room, how to become what others want, how to play roles we never really chose, all in the name of belonging. But deep down, we feel the cost. The more we fit in, the more we lose contact with who we really are. We begin to forget what we actually want, what we actually believe, and what actually matters to us. And over time, we confuse the feeling of being accepted for the act of being invisible. Because when you have to shrink yourself to be liked, you're not being accepted, you're being tolerated under conditions. There's nothing wrong with being flexible or adaptable, but when you do it at the expense of your values, your truth, or your identity, you're not adapting, you're abandoning, you're turning yourself into a version that pleases the crowd but betrays your core. And here's the hardest part. Even when you fit in perfectly, it still doesn't satisfy you. It might feel good temporarily, but eventually you start to feel disconnected, unseen, and unknown because no one can see the real you when all they're interacting with is the version of you you've edited for approval. Belonging, on the other hand, is rooted in authenticity. It doesn't ask you to perform, to prove, or to polish yourself into someone else's comfort zone. Belonging says, come as you are. It's not about finding a place where everyone agrees with you. It's about finding spaces where you're free to disagree, to be messy, to be honest, and still be loved. It's not about sameness. It's about acceptance. True belonging begins with the relationship you have with yourself. If you're constantly trying to win the approval of others, it's a sign that you haven't yet given yourself that approval. You can't expect the world to embrace you if you're rejecting your own identity every day. That's why the path to real connection always starts inward, with the decision to stop performing and start showing up, even if it means standing alone for a while. And yes, it might. When you stop trying to fit in, some people will drift away. Some groups will no longer feel like home. Some spaces will reveal themselves as conditional and transactional. But that's not a loss. It's clarity. And that clarity will create space for real connection, for relationships built not on what you offer, but on who you are. Choosing belonging over fitting in is an act of courage. It requires you to walk into rooms without armor. It means choosing to be seen fully, not selectively. It means saying, "This is who I am," without adding, "Is that okay?" And that kind of courage is contagious. When one person shows up real, others begin to feel permission to do the same. So stop bending to be accepted. Start standing to be known. Because the people who truly see you, the ones who accept the full, unedited version of you, are the only ones worth building your life with. Belonging is not about being liked by everyone. It's about being loved by the right ones, starting with yourself.